My name is Szymon, and I'm 56 years old. For a living, I design and I build things. More specifically, I'm an architect, and I'd like to think I'm a very good one. My world is simple, really. It's not people. People are variables, unpredictable, messy. My world is all about rules, physics, math, loads and stresses. You follow the rules, the building stands up. You break them, it falls down. I don't design flimsy suburban houses. I design statements. Complex, modern structures that look like they defy gravity. But they don't. They just follow the rules so perfectly that they look impossible. I'm known for being meticulous. Obsessive, my junior draftsmen probably whisper when I'm gone. I don't care. Close enough is how people get hurt. Precision is everything. Every angle, every millimeter, every single material stress test, every single thing matters. My plans are not suggestions, they are scripture. That's why I took this last job. The client was some reclusive billionaire, Adam, who wanted a private place for reflection. It was basically a high-concept mausoleum out in the middle of nowhere on a desolate stretch of coast. The design he wanted was a nightmare, a structuralist's headache, all intersecting non-Euclidean angles, hidden rooms and spaces meant to evoke feelings. I hate designing for feelings. I design for function. I saw it as the ultimate test of my skills. I was going to impose perfect, rational order on his ridiculous, abstract ideas. And I did. The blueprints are a masterpiece of problem solving, a testament to pure, cold logic. I'm here now, on site, for the final walkthrough. Just me and the structure. It's finished, and it's quiet. A heavy, absorbent quiet that only tons of concrete can create. The air is still, smelling of dust and gypsum. I told you I'm obsessive. I wasn't born this way. It was learned the hard way. 30 years ago, when I was just starting out, I made a mistake. A tiny one. A single calculation buried in 100 pages of plans. A beam was off by, what was it, 6 millimeters? 6. Nobody died, thank God. But a whole cantilevered balcony on a public building sagged. It didn't collapse, it just drooped like it was tired. The media had a field day. They called me the droopy architect. It was humiliating. The feeling of my own trusted numbers, my language, turning on me. I can still feel that hot sickness in my stomach. Standing in that boardroom, being shown the pictures, I wasn't just embarrassed, I was a fraud. My own logic had failed me. I swore never again. From that day on, I checked everything. Then I checked it again. Then I had someone else check it. And then I checked their work. My reputation is built on that promise. My buildings do not fail. My angles are true. My spaces are rational. My biggest fear isn't heights or spiders or even dying. My biggest fear is the loss of control. The idea that the world I've built my life on, the world of physics, of concrete, of measurable space, could just stop making sense. And that's why I'm standing in the lobby of my greatest achievement, holding my perfect blueprints and feeling the first cold sting of discrepancy. I'm looking at the hallway in front of me, and I know with every fiber of my being that the angle of that wall is not the angle I designed. My first thought wasn't ghosts. My first thought was that idiot foreman. He improvised. I was furious. How dare he deviate from the plan? He saw a problem, probably with the rebar placement, and thought he could just fix it without consulting me. I was furious. I dropped my briefcase right there on the dusty concrete, pulled my laser measure from my tool belt, and stalked over to the wall. The sun was getting low, casting long, strange shadows across the lobby, making the new concrete look bruised. "I'll have his job for this," I was muttering. "I'll have his license." I pressed the measure's base flat against the reference wall, aimed the little red dot down the hall, and pressed the button. Click. I read the number on the digital display. My stomach twisted. It wasn't off by 6 millimeters. It was off by 4 degrees. That's not a mistake. That's not possible. I stared at the number, waiting for it to change. A 4-degree shift in a load-bearing wall? The foundation would be shattered. The ceiling would have collapsed. The rebar would be screaming under the impossible tension. But everything was pristine, solid, perfect. "My tool's broken," I said out loud, just to hear a voice. The silence in the lobby just swallowed the words. I shook it, as if that would fix a faulty laser. I took the measurement again. Same reading. I unclipped my old-school analog angle finder from my belt, the one I trust. I held its metal arms against the concrete. The laser was right. The wall was wrong. My brain just stalled. It couldn't process the data. This wasn't a droop. This was a violation of geometry. A building cannot be this wrong and still be standing. It cannot. I felt shaky. I needed to reset. I needed to check something I knew was right. A control variable. The reflection chamber, I decided. It's the centerpiece of the whole design. A perfect cube, 10 meters by 10 meters by 10 meters, suspended inside the main structure. A box within a box. I checked it myself last week. It was perfect. It was my anchor. I had to prove the wall was the only flaw. I had to isolate the error. I walked down the main hallway, my blueprints clutched in my hand. The sound of my own footsteps on the polished concrete was the only thing I could hear. Clack, clack, clack. It was too loud. It felt wrong. I was rationalizing. I'm tired. The light is playing tricks. I misread the plans. But I never misread the plans. I turned the corner where the entrance to the chamber should be. And I stopped dead. There was no doorway. It wasn't bricked up. It wasn't boarded over. It was just gone. In its place was a solid, seamless, perfectly smooth stretch of concrete, identical to the rest of the wall. I ran my hands over it. It was real, cold and solid. It felt like it had been there since the foundation was poured. No! I was fumbling with my blueprints, unfolding the page for this section, holding it up to the blank wall like a madman. No, the door is here. It's right here. A 3-meter opening. My voice was tight. My heart was hammering, a dry, painful thud in my chest. I looked back the way I came, toward the lobby. I could still see the open entrance, a bright rectangle of fading orange light. It looked very, very far away. I turned back to the impossible wall. I had to be wrong. I had to be disoriented. I pounded my fist on the concrete. It was solid. It hurt. This wasn't drywall. This was load-bearing, reinforced fact. I blinked hard, rubbing my eyes. When I opened them, the wall was different. It was still solid, but now about 2 meters to my left, a hairline crack had appeared. I heard it before I saw it, a faint ticking sound, like a piece of quartz cooling. A tiny, dark fissure running from the floor to the ceiling. It wasn't there a second ago. I know it wasn't. And as I stared, a puff of cold air, smelling of damp earth, whispered out of it. My brain was screaming at me, "Get out! Get in the car! Drive away! Call the developer! Call Adam! Call anyone!" But I couldn't move. That crack, it wasn't on the plans. That smell. This whole building was climate-controlled, sealed. It shouldn't smell like Earth. I'm an architect. I solve problems. This was just a very big problem. I had to understand it. I pulled the high-powered flashlight from my tool belt and walked toward the crack. I shined the light into it. It wasn't a crack. It was a gap. The wall had split. On the other side wasn't rebar or insulation. It was a hallway. A narrow, dark hallway that I had not designed. "What is this?" I whispered. "A service corridor I forgot? Impossible! I don't forget." A sound came from down that new hallway. A faint, dry skittering, like sand pouring over stone. This is the point where any sane person would have run. I know that, but you have to understand. This thing was a flaw in my work. It was a 6mm mistake magnified into a nightmare. I couldn't leave it. I had to see. I turned sideways and squeezed through the gap. The concrete was cold and scraped against my jacket. I was in. The hallway was barely a meter wide. The ceiling was low, pressing down. It stank of damp soil and something else, something old. I turned to look back at the gap I'd just come through. There was no gap. There was just a solid wall of concrete. I lunged at it, pounding my fist. "No! No!" It was solid as the wall that shouldn't have been there in the first place. My breath hitched. The panic, the real panic, grabbed my throat. I was in. I shined my flashlight down the new corridor. It stretched into darkness. I was in a part of my building that did not exist. And from deep in that darkness, I heard the sound again, louder this time. Scrape, shift, drag. It wasn't one sound, it was hundreds. The sound of 1,000 stones all grinding against each other. The sound of geometry remaking itself. And I was at its center. I tried to be rational. I am in a service chase. The foreman added this without telling me. I will find a maintenance hatch. I will walk to the end. I walked. The flashlight beam cut a perfect white circle in the dark. The walls weren't smooth, poured concrete. They were rough, almost like hewn rock. The smell of damp earth was overpowering, like a freshly dug grave. That grinding sound, it wasn't in front of me anymore. It was behind me. I spun around. The corridor was empty, but it felt shorter. I couldn't be sure. I turned and walked faster. My blueprints were still in my hand. Useless. A map of a place I wasn't in. I was in the walls. I was in the spaces between my perfect measurements. I don't know how long I walked. An hour? 3? My mouth was dry. The beam of my flashlight was starting to look yellow, weaker. I was in my late 50s, not a young man. My knees ached. I finally came to a set of stairs. Concrete, utilitarian. They weren't on any plan. Stairs go up, I reasoned. Up is the roof. Up is out. I climbed. I climbed for what felt like forever. I came out into a new hallway. But this wasn't the roof. It was another floor. A floor that should not exist. The building I designed had 6 stories. This was 7. I ran to a window. It was just a black, reflective sheet of glass. I pounded on it. It was thick, unmoving. And outside, there was nothing. No city lights, no coast, no stars. Just black. An absolute, featureless void. I started to run. I ran down the long hallway, and I noticed the curve. It was subtle, so subtle a normal person wouldn't see it. But I'm an architect. I see angles. The wall was curving inwards, an impossible long, perfect radius that my blueprint said was a straight line. I ran, and the curve just kept going. My logical mind was shattering. I was on a floor that didn't exist, in a building I designed, running in a circle. That's when I started to truly lose it. My old trauma, that 6mm mistake, it felt small. This was wrong. This wasn't a miscalculation. This was a recalculation. The building was thinking. I stopped running. I was gasping, my heart feeling like it would burst. The grinding sound was back. It was all around me now. Scrape, shift, drag. It was the sound of the walls. The walls themselves were moving. The long, curving corridor, it was getting tighter. The ceiling, I realized, was lower than it was a minute ago. I wasn't being hunted. I was being filed. The building was compressing me, hurting me. I saw an opening ahead, a dark square on the floor, an unfinished service shaft. The foundation, I thought. If I can get to the foundation, I can get out. I ran for it, and the building shoved. The floor didn't just tilt, it warped. The geometry itself broke. The walls pressed in, scraping my shoulders, forcing me toward that black square. The sound was deafening now, the shriek of 1,000 tons of concrete shifting, of physics tearing itself apart. My greatest skill, my understanding of space, was useless. The space was lying. I fell into the shaft, into the cold, earthy dark. I landed hard on a pile of dirt, knocking the wind out of me. My flashlight clattered and went out. I was in total blackness, and above me, I heard the most terrifying sound of all. The slow, grinding, final scrape of the shaft sealing itself shut. The construction crews arrived the next morning. I think I heard them. Faint vibrations, muffled by an impossible amount of earth and concrete. Or maybe that's just the memory of vibration. It is very quiet here. They found my briefcase in the lobby, right where I dropped it. My car was still in the lot. They walked the site. The foreman, the one I'd been so ready to fire, was there with his own set of plans. They checked my laser measurements against their own. The wall in the lobby? Perfect, 90 degrees on the dot. The reflection chamber? The doorway was exactly where it should be. The entire building was perfect, to the millimeter. The police were called. They searched. They brought in dogs, who just whined and refused to enter the lobby. They found nothing. No secret passages, no hairline cracks, no 7th floor. They brought in thermal imagers. They saw nothing but solid concrete and rebar. They figured I must have had a breakdown, just wandered off into the city. That droopy architect finally cracking up. Adam, the developer, was impatient. The project continued. It's finished now. People are in it. I can feel them. Not see them, but feel their movement, the stresses they put on the structure. They say the building makes them uneasy. They complain about rooms feeling smaller than they are. They report getting lost in simple hallways they've walked a dozen times. One of them, a woman, refuses to go near the reflection chamber. She says it feels wrong. I'm still here, you see. I'm in the walls. I'm in the impossible spaces between the perfect measurements. I'm in the 4-degree variance. I spent my whole life terrified of a 6-millimeter mistake. I built a monument to precision to prove I was better than that. But the world, it's not rational. The space itself is not rational. My building, it follows rules, just not my rules. It needed to settle. It needed to fit where it was built. And I was the part that didn't fit. I was the illogical element. I designed this place, and I am its final, permanent structural flaw. I am the error that was corrected. It has become my very own self-designed tombstone.
There are more scares to share. Press the like button and subscribe so you don't miss a single terrifying moment. You're helping me investigate the deepest, darkest corners to bring you stories that haunt your dreams.